Welcome, everyone. This is from Black Liturgies, a daily prayer. God, our Maker, we honor the sacred multitude that resides in you. May the guardian in you protect us. May the child in you delight in us. May the friend in you challenge us. May your ashes resurrect us. May your sky shelter us. May the mystery of you liberate us. Provide abundance and healing in all forms to those who need it today, and deliver us from shame, hatred, and the chains that bind us. For you have made us glory, and we are still being made. Amen.
Amen. Welcome, Cole. Many of the readers of Richard Rohr's Daily Meditations might recognize you because we've quoted you in the Daily Meditations, and my team has appreciated your poetic and prayerful writing. My name is Mark. I'm the managing editor of the Daily Meditations, and I'm thrilled to be here with Cole Arthur Riley, who is a writer and poet. She is the author of the books This Here Flesh and now Black Liturgies. So as we get started, Cole, I'm thrilled to be speaking with you right now as your book is about to launch. Thanks for taking the time. And here's an opening question. For folks who may not know about your work, how do you describe your book, Black Liturgies?
Yes. So Black Liturgies is a collection of letters, prayers, breath practice, questions for interior examine, that center the Black interior world, the Black interior life, and tried its best to kind of provide a contemplative and liturgical form for communing with the divine that people can use as individuals and in community. Yeah.
And I know from reading the book that both of those words are very intentional, Black and liturgies. So why liturgy and why Black liturgies?
Yeah, I mean, for folks that aren't familiar, the kind of Greek word for liturgy translates to work of the people, sometimes work for the people, but work of the people. And I encountered liturgy for the first time in an Episcopal church outside of Philadelphia, and found real comfort and rest in the beauty of the words, the poetry of the words. I think I studied writing in college and was drawn to kind of a way to connect with God that didn't depend so much on my own innovation, my own ability to kind of come up with beautiful words on the spot. And I was in a season of a lot of despair and needed a community to kind of hold words for me and hold imagination for me. So my love for liturgy was born then. In the summer of 2020, I started a project called Black Liturgies that was born out of a lot of grief. You know, it was the summer of 2020, so the world was kind of contending with a slew of Black deaths. We lost Elijah McClain, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and eventually George Floyd, culminating in this kind of global reckoning with historic Black death and the degradation of the Black body in America. And I started Black Liturgies online as a project first, as a way to, make space for Black emotion and Black grief and the Black body in a way that felt honest to me. Yeah.
Thanks so much. How do you intend these liturgies to be read and used?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, mostly there's a lot of freedom in the pages for it to be used in whatever way feels right. I think the first part one of the book, which is kind of organized around like the existential kind of like shared stories of what it means to be human, things like dignity and love and memory and mortality. that part, each of those sections are prefaced with a kind of letter, and they end with some questions for like interior examine that I think lend itself really well to being encountered as an individual, but I think I also can imagine them being encountered in a kind of safe and small community. I've offered benedictions and kind of prayers of forgiveness and confession in those sections as well, in the event that people want to encounter them in community. And then the second half of the book, which is organized around time and different seasons, a lot of the seasons kind of fitting into a Christian liturgical calendar. Those you'll find a lot more, call and response type prayers. It's kind of written with a communal voice in mind. Yeah.
You write in the preface about how the project, and you just spoke eloquently about how it emerged out of 2020, global racial reckoning of American injustice, crisis. And here in the Daily Meditations, we've just launched our annual theme. We're calling it Radical Resilience. And each quarter we'll be exploring an aspect of developing radical resilience. And this quarter, we're exploring engaging with a world on fire. And your book seems to speak directly to moments, a world in crisis, a world on fire. And so I wanted to ask, how do poetry and prayer, as you are developing and conceiving it, how do they provide support for engaging with a world that's on fire with many crises and injustices?
I think poetry and prayer offer kind of a way of seeing, or maybe even a way of becoming honest about what we've seen, that can be lacking in kind of the day-to-day of life. I think there's a wonderful quotation from James Baldwin, and he says, it's the artist's responsibility to kind of take all of the anguish and vomit that anguish up. And he has a lot to say about how, only poets can be trusted to tell the truth, to tell the truth about us. He says the statesman can't, priests can't, teachers can't, only the poet. And I've thought about that a lot, and what it means to be an artist when, the world is on fire, I think, is to be an artist that kind of refuses to, submit themselves to like a willful escapism, a willful amnesia even. I think good art is involved. It's in the fire. It's, born of ash and sorrow and pain, and it's so disinterested in like escaping. I think it's much more about presence and conveying something, conveying some part of the human experience without demanding anyone believe or think any one thing. So I love liturgy in that way, because there's so much, good Christian literature out there, good spiritual literature out there, but at the end of the day, a lot of it is calling you to a particular set of beliefs, a particular set of creeds and doctrines. And I think the relief in liturgy, similar to poetry, is it's making such little demand of our beliefs. It's not asking us to think the same thing as the poet, to feel the same thing as a poet even. It's just asking you to enter a human experience that is honest. Can you enter it? Can you convey it? And I think the world needs more of that simple conveyance.
We're taking our readers on a year-long journey of radical resilience. And I just wanted to ask, what does that phrase, radical resilience, stir up for you?
Yeah, it's a good theme. It stirs some amount of tension and some amount of encouragement, I think. The tension comes, I used to hear this word resilience and kind of like shudder a little bit and think, am I really meant to, when you think about like the origins of the word resilience, it's closer to talking about plastic, something that returns back to its original shape after you bend it. And I think humans don't really work like that. Really, we don't go back to the way we were before we were broken or bent. And so I had all these kind of, and I'm a cynic, I admit that I'm recovering, cynic. And so I used to have so much resistance to language of resilience. And it's only really in the past few years that I've had to kind of confront a kind of resilience that isn't really about returning back to the way you were before, but is much more about reclaiming whatever new shape, your form has taken since. A resilience that doesn't really ask us to forget, but that carries the memory of whatever harm or, whatever fire, we've been through. Resilience that carries that memory and still is committed to, one's survival and one's going on in the world, however that shape looks. So I have, increasing connection to the word. Yeah. And it is radical. It's a radical idea. And I think, there's this is another James Baldwin quotation. He's actually reviewing the Exorcist film, and it's this beautiful review. I recommend everyone read it because he's talking about much more than The Exorcist, but he's talking about the terrors of the world, which you all are engaging in. And he says it's very important for me to not pretend as if the terrors of the time left no mark on me, that they marked me forever. And I think he's getting at a kind of resilience that still carries memory, that still says we're marked, we've been through something, but that we're committed to ultimately surviving this thing.
Yeah, whatever resilience we're talking about, it carries with us the mark of the trauma, the pain. I'm even thinking of Jesus carrying the marks of the cross
Yes.
in his resurrected body.
It's beautiful.
Another question for you. One aspect that I love about the book is, and I'm a former minister, so I appreciate that you've done this. You take traditional elements of church liturgy and you're reinterpreting, you're imbuing them with new and different meaning. And so each liturgy has a section of the aspects that you've named, including confession and forgiveness. And you quote June Jordan on confession, which that stuck out to me. So I wanted to bring it forward. In relation to the truth-telling of confession, here's the quote: "To tell the truth is to become beautiful, to begin to love yourself, value yourself, and that's political in its most profound way." Can you describe further what reinterpreting some of these liturgical elements means for you, such as confession and forgiveness?
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad the June Jordan quote kind of resonated with you. I think for a while, when at least kind of the first Christian spaces I belonged to, it felt very much so that confession was this, a time to kind of feel bad about myself. It was the time to say that you're bad, that you're ugly, that, and of course there's something in that, we make terrible and ugly choices in the world. But I'm interested in the idea of, June Jordan wasn't explicitly talking about confession, but certainly a kind of it in truth-telling of, is there a kind of way of viewing confession that is less grounded in the ugliness, of humanity, but in fact the beauty that just by the nature of us being willing to tell the truth about what's in us, to tell the truth about the kind of more sinister parts of us, that it's actually becoming beautiful as opposed to a realization of ugliness. I like that, they're not far from each other, but they're far enough that it feels more welcoming and more safe. I think especially for those of us who have kind of been trained in self-hatred, and confession can be this pious practice of self-hatred, under the guise of piety, we can, begin to practice self-hatred. So I like that kind of subversion. And then forgiveness. I mean, I wasn't sure what to do with, the role of absolution and feeling my own, insufficiency and absolving other people of their sins and of their wrongs. And so I thought, what kind of forgiveness do I feel right accessing or trying to draw people into? And I thought, certainly forgiveness of the self, is no small thing. Can I lead people, even forgiveness of the self and even imagination for forgiveness of the divine, even if I don't feel, capable of speaking for God in the way that, a priest might feel that comfort. So, there's a kind of phrase of forgiveness in at least all of the sections in part 1. And I think there's a common refrain of "let your souls receive this rest," which was a late addition to kind of have that common refrain in those forgiveness prayers of thinking what kind of, because ultimately that guilt, that shame, it's a kind of restlessness of the soul. And when we practice forgiveness, even for a moment, even if it's not linear or consistent or even final, I personally have rarely experienced forgiveness as feeling final. One day I forgive myself, the next day might feel very differently again about what I've done. And so can we access even for a moment some of the rest, some of the interior rest that comes when we feel forgiven?
To close, Cole, I wanted to invite you to read a prayer and with a benediction. So readers, listeners, as Cole reads, I invite you to find your feet on the ground, do whatever you need to do to find a comfortable position, maybe attend to your breath. And as you slow down, begin to receive these words.
This is a prayer for being human. God of Shalom, here we are, dangling one another from the precipice without care or concern for our collective fate. We have lost sight of our own faces, risking our humanity in favor of supremacy. Guide us away from the edge of our undoing. Show us what it means to be people of deep and abiding reverence for the beauty and connectedness of everything everywhere. Train us out of habits of degradation and artifice, incessantly competing to be worth more, to be loved more. Remind us that we don't need to exalt humanity over any other piece of creation in order to be worth something. Keep us from the delusion of our dominion over earth, sky, or star. We are no greater. Remind us that the dust beneath us transcends our own humble existence, and let our hardened exteriors soften in the presence of safety. May any honor we've withheld from one another be doubled in the presence of reparation and forgiveness. We won't get free alone. Keep us human. Amen. And you can receive this benediction. May the God who made all things and holds together all things remind you of your making. May you rest in the imminence of your own worth, knowing you have nothing to prove and everything to love. Constant is the moon which is tethered to us by unseen forces, which is suspended above us in the dark and the light. Let our dignity remain, be it visible or invisible to those below. And may we remember the same dignity that holds us, so too holds together every person and piece of the cosmos at once and evermore. Go in honor to claim all that you are worthy of. May it be so.